Hey guys, it's Barrett with the Gimpy Camper. This is Steve with Shelburne RV. So today we want to talk about replacing your RV fridge. Now there's a couple of different types of fridges. There's 3 or 4 types, and there's different ways that you can go about replacing this. And the cost is going to vary a lot in between there. So I want to just talk about the benefits of each type of fridge first. So let's talk about the 12-volt fridge. Now, a benefit to the 12-volt fridge is that it's going to get cold faster, and you don't need any additional fuel such as propane in order to run it. You are going to need some power, which we'll talk about in a minute, which actually goes along with the cons of this type of fridge. And if you have a large solar system, though, the batteries can be a good option there. Now let's talk about the benefits of propane, and that's having a low power draw, and it doesn't use much propane at all, and it's tried and true, been used for many decades. Any opinions on any of that?
Well, like I said, I am more of an ammonia refrigerator fan than I am a residential, because I mean, once we repair your ammonia refrigerator with an Amish cooling unit, typically I don't have those customers come back. Residential refrigerators, unfortunately, they get beat up and down the road, and we replace a bunch of them. 12-volt refrigerators, you know, obviously the power's got to come from somewhere. So, you know, if you've got a customer that wants to spend the money, then, you know, like Barrett says, solar, inverters, batteries, you can do all that stuff and do it. But again, in the area where I'm at, and it's kind of low cost, people look at that, you know, $500, and it's fine if you park, you know, $500-600 for a refrigerator, a residential refrigerator. I mean, you can park it. And if you never travel and you're just living in it, residential way to go. But if you're going to do a lot of boondocking, I mean, you go out to South Dakota a lot. You pull up to South Dakota with your little residential 120 refrigerator and you're running batteries and an inverter, unless you spend a tremendous amount of money on solar, that refrigerator is going to be dead in a few hours. So it comes back to, you know, what are you actually trying to do? Are you trying to live in it? Are you trying to travel with it? It really comes down to the benefits of what you're trying to do. And not saying a lot of people do residential refrigerators, but just understand there are more costs, there are more things you have to do. That low price for the refrigerator is great, but that power's got to come from somewhere.
All right, so let's talk about the cons of each one of these. So 12 volt, like you were saying, one of the big cons can be the large power draw. You know, if you have solar, that can help with that. If you have lithium batteries, now you're gonna need 1 to 2 batteries just to cover the 12 volt fridge, the power use per day. Another thing you can do is a DC to DC charger, because that charge that comes through the traditional 7-pin connector is just not going to keep up with a 12-volt fridge at all. And then one of the bigger cons, like Steve's kind of hinted to before, is I think they see a lot more problems with these 12-volt fridges.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and when I talked to the lady at Dometic about the 12 volt, you know, because we don't really see a lot of Dometic refrigerators. Dometic, the 12 volt Dometics seem to they seem to do well. Now, you know, some of the other brands we struggle with. And when I was talking to the lady at Dometic, I said, hey, what's the biggest problem you have with those? And she said, really, the biggest problem we have is the OEMs not putting big enough wiring going from the battery to the refrigerator to give it, and that's where some of the problems come into. So if you are going to go in and add a 12-volt fridge, just understand you need to look at that manual real closely, and there are minimum gauge size wires that you will need to pull to that refrigerator. You cannot use that standard 12 volts that they've got sitting back there behind the refrigerator now. You just can't do it. It's not going to be nowhere near big enough, and then what's going to end up happening, you'll end up damaging the refrigerator. So you do your due diligence, read your manual, make sure that you have the right gauge wire size, so that way you don't damage that refrigerator.
All right, so let's say something happens to your fridge and you want to change it out. So we have a few options. The first option is to see if they can repair your old fridge, which we'll talk about in a second. Another option is to replace it with the same fridge that came in there. Another option is to do the JC refrigeration conversion, which is probably the best option we'll talk about in just a second. And then, like he was saying, you can do the residential fridge. It's better if it's not used to travel a lot. One option that a lot of people use is a 10.1 cubic foot refrigerator, because they're roughly the same size as a lot of these RV fridges, and they're pretty cheap. But like he said, they don't tend to put up with all the bouncing down the road.
And on that, Barrett, see, the other problem is, so like you go out and buy a Frigidaire, or you buy a GE, or you buy a Samsung or LG or something of that nature. If that refrigerator, and it does have a warranty, but if it goes bad in the first year, unless you pull the refrigerator out and set it on the floor, there's places that come out and look at it, but you've got to do the work to get it out and have it ready sitting there, because they will not pull it out of the coach. You have to have it sitting there waiting on them.
All right, so let's talk about the JC refrigeration. So tell us kind of a little bit of background on what that system is.
So JC refrigeration, Dutch air, there's actually two parts of that. So there's Dutch air and there's Pines refrigeration. Now, Larry Miller, who owns Pines Refrigeration, rebuilds a lot of cooling units, and his brother-in-law, who owns JC, builds brand new units. Now, if you come in and you have a refrigerator that goes bad, cooling unit's bad, Dometic gives a 2-year warranty on their cooling units. Norcold only gives 12 months. JC Refrigeration, if we do a rebuilt cooling unit, he's going to give me a 5-year warranty. And if you do that's through Pines Refrigeration. If you do JC refrigeration, the new units come standard with a 3-year warranty, and for just a little bit more money, you can buy 3 years on top of that for a total of 6. There's nobody in the industry that does that, not even the OEMs, because again, they still are having issues with their cooling units where the Amish have solved all that. So for me, I can give you a better warranty and know that, once we put those units in there, typically you're never going to have any more problems, because the Amish have solved the issue with the fire and the problems.
Are those units more like consistent with newer refrigeration systems, or
newer refrigeration systems as what? What do you mean?
Like what you would find in a typical residential fridge, or how are they different?
Well, and so the beauty about JC refrigeration is, a lot of these coaches, those units were specifically built for the cabinetry in there. So if you don't want to change that footprint, a lot of times residential refrigerators might stick out 3 or 4 inches from where the original refrigerator was. And some people don't like that, or the refrigerator's close to a hallway and they don't want to be stumbling past the refrigerator. JC Refrigeration does offer cooling units to go in ammonia refrigerators that are either 12-volt refrigerators. The cooling unit actually has a 12-volt compressor on it, or they have a 120-volt compressor. So if you have a footprint that you close to a hallway and it's going to be hard to get past, you can use the cases. They're all cookie cutter. So they do offer, if you want to have an ammonia refrigerator where you have very little power draw when you boondock, you can do that. They offer also residential style. So if you want to put a 12-volt compressor in there, they have that. If you want to put a 120 compressor in there, they have that. I will tell you, we've done several of those conversions where people have gone to 120 compressors or 12-volt compressors. We've probably done more 120s than we have 12-volt. And I will tell you, the folks at JC Refrigeration did a lot of due diligence, making sure that they were using compressors that could handle the jars and the beating of the roads and the vibration. So we literally have zero problems out of their compressor style cooling units to go back in the OEMs, where some of these other brands, we have a lot of problem with them.
What's the cost on one of those JC units and you guys doing it versus like replacing your whole ammonia fridge?
Well, and so, again, keep in mind that some refrigerators obviously are no longer produced. Norcold and Dometic obviously have moved on to other ventures and what they do. And so there are a lot of refrigerators that do not have direct replacements anymore because they've gone to a 12-volt style refrigerator. Now, fortunately, over the years, I collected a lot of parts and replacement stuff, so I've still got a lot of stuff put up to do that. But let's just say that you have a Norcold 1201 and a Winnebago, and you want to turn it into a residential 120-volt compressor style. I mean, you're going to spend probably $2,700 plus tax to install the cooling unit and do that. But again, you're going to come with a 3-year out of the box. You can purchase another 3 years on top of that for a total of 6 years. And I have a lot of customers in Winnebagos that change those to residentials, and frigid air seems to do the best as far as not having to pull them out and have problems. For us around here, unfortunately, Samsung and LG, the repairman that does the repairs on those comes out of Nashville. So obviously you're paying for his time to come all the way from Nashville to do that. So that can be very expensive when you start talking, warranty, because they'll pay for those type of manufacturers will pay for the parts. They just don't pay for the travel time. So you're still stuck with a refrigerator that's under warranty, but you're still paying out money because obviously they're going to charge you money to do that. So again, pros and cons of everything you do. I mean, again, I can't help you on the residential, but I can make your ammonia one run like a Swiss watch.
And then one more system that I don't think that we've talked about. Don't they, for people that like boondock exclusively, don't they have a cooling unit that's just on propane and doesn't require power?
Well, and again, JC or Pines Refrigeration does. All their cooling units are designed that can do that. Now, again, remember, all of those refrigerators are set up to have 12 volts controls to operate the gas, operate the controls. Now, we have converted some to mechanical, where you just go back behind the refrigerator and you mechanically set the temperature you want. Now, you've got to light it to get the pilot going. Once you get that done, you can mechanically do that. And a lot of years ago, my daddy and I used to take, RM 2852s, and we would convert them over to gas only with mechanical controls, because we were selling them to a lot of forest ranger stations that were out in the middle of nowhere. So we had some that were set up where they, once you lit it, it would only run on propane and it would never shut off. So there are some off-grid refrigerators that we have done. I've got a off-grid freezer sitting down in the shop right now that only runs on gas, and you mechanically light it, and once you do, unless the gas runs out, that thing will run forever. So there are some options to do this. Not very common in the RV thing because most people don't want to go out there and light it. I mean, even so here's a good example. So the old mechanical water heaters that back in the day on the 30 amp campers, where you'd have to go out there and actually physically light them to get them going, and then there was a dial. Some of you guys remember those. Those water heaters are gone. All that mechanical stuff is gone. So even now today, if you had an old mechanical and we have to convert it over to a new water heater because the tank failed or whatever, you're going to get a water heater that we're going to have to run 12 volts to that actually lights the flame. They don't have any now that are mechanical. All that mechanical stuff's kind of gone away.
And the use cases for those, like you were saying, is few and far between. I was just going to throw it out there as an option. But that's all we have for this video, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for next week's video as well.